There is a truth few people dare to admit. We are not unhappy because we lack something. We are unhappy because we forget to see what we already have. Each morning, instead of being grateful for one more day to live, we start with a list of not enough money, not enough time, not enough love, not enough life. We get so busy comparing ourselves to others that we no longer notice the quiet goodness that has been here all along. But today, just for a moment, pause and ask yourself, what have I forgotten to be grateful for? If that question touches you, comment 1, not for me, but as a reminder to yourself that it's time to reclaim the peace you unintentionally lost. There is a quiet truth that slowly wears people down, and you might be carrying it in your heart without even realizing it. We don't suffer because we lack things. We suffer because we lose the ability to see what we already have. Day after day, you wake up with a feeling of not enough. Not enough money to live comfortably. Not enough time to do what you want. Not enough love to feel whole. Not enough safety to trust that tomorrow will be better. You look at other people's lives and everything seems brighter, easier, happier for them. And the moment you believe that, your own life feels heavy, cramped, and constantly missing something you can't even name. The frightening part is that this habit doesn't come from big events, but from tiny moments that repeat over and over. One comparison, one complaint, one moment of feeling less than. Bit by bit, it drains your gratitude, your joy, your energy. Have you noticed that the older we get, the less we say thank you, not to others, but to life itself? As children, everything feels new and beautiful. But as adults, the good things become so familiar that we treat them as guaranteed. Your health becomes something you assume will always be there. Your loved ones become something you assume will always stay. Your job, though exhausting, is something you assume you'll always have. A home to return to becomes something you assume you'll never lose. And once everything becomes obvious, you stop being grateful. And when gratitude disappears, so does happiness. Seneca once observed people who had everything money could buy, yet lived in misery because they lacked one thing money can never give, the ability to feel enough. He said, "No one is happy unless he is grateful." This is not poetic philosophy. It is one of life's raw truths. You can own the whole world, but if your heart feels empty, none of it matters. You can live a successful life by every social standard, but if you constantly compare, constantly feel lacking, you will always live like someone poor, chasing a missing piece that does not exist. Look at your own life. How many times have you complained about your job, forgetting how many people desperately wish they had one? How many times have you been annoyed by traffic, forgetting that you have someplace to go and someplace to return to? How many times have you gotten angry at a loved one, forgetting that their presence is something others have lost forever? How many times have you scrolled through social media, seen other people's perfect-looking lives, and asked, "Why is my life so bad?" without realizing how many beautiful things you were ignoring in that very moment? We are not unhappy because we lack good things. We are unhappy because we fail to see the good things. That is the real tragedy. The most miserable person is not the one who has little, but the one surrounded by abundance and still feels empty. And that invisible emptiness is what makes life exhausting, what turns every day into a race with no finish line, what makes you feel like you're chasing something you can never catch. The more you compare, the more you create emptiness. The more you complain, the more life feels unfair. The more you focus on what's missing, the more you believe you lack everything, and the farther you drift from gratitude. But if you look deeper, you'll realize that every single day carries quiet gifts worth noticing, worth holding, worth saying thank you for. You are breathing, you are walking, you are eating a simple meal, you have a home, you have someone to talk to. And even if you have none of these, you still have a chance to begin again. These small things, when seen clearly, become the strength that carries you through your hardest days. Stoics never looked at life through rose-colored glasses. They didn't deny suffering. They didn't pretend everything was fine. They simply knew this. When you practice gratitude, you can see both the darkness and the light with balance. You are grateful when life is good, because it is a blessing. You are grateful when life is hard, because it is a teacher. In both cases, gratitude keeps you steady. The saddest part is that we often appreciate things only after they're gone. People value health when they're sick, family when they're no longer here, love after it leaves, time when they realize it never comes back. So why wait until everything slips away before you realize its worth? Why not learn to see the gifts while they're still in front of you? Maybe you don't notice it, but right now your life holds more goodness than you think. You just need new eyes to see it again. And gratitude is that new way of seeing. When you are grateful, a simple meal becomes fullness. A quiet moment becomes peace. An old friend becomes a blessing. Even a tiring day becomes proof that you're still living, still trying, still moving forward. You don't need to change your life to be happier. You only need to change the way you look at it. If you've read this far and see a piece of your own life in these words, leave a comment. 1. If you realize your heart once forgot something it should have been grateful for, leave a 0. Because sometimes one small action like that is enough to remind you that it's time to look again, to appreciate again, and to love the things that have always been by your side, quietly waiting for you to notice them. There is a reason gratitude is not just a beautiful virtue, but a necessary foundation for inner peace. Because most of our suffering comes from losing the ability to see the value of what is already right in front of us. It's not the big crises that drain us. It's the quiet, constant feeling of lack that hides inside our daily lives. A feeling that makes you believe you're always behind, always less, never enough, never worthy. And this feeling slowly destroys your joy, your motivation, your sense of peace, and your ability to enjoy being alive. The frightening part is that this feeling of not enough doesn't come from your circumstances. It comes from your perspective. You can live in a comfortable home but still feel empty. You can have a good job but never feel satisfied. You can be healthy but still feel inferior to someone else. When gratitude disappears, everything you have becomes dull, blurry, and eventually meaningless. Life turns into a tiring chase where you try to fill the emptiness inside with things beyond your reach: money, recognition, praise, success. But the closer you get, the more hollow everything feels. That's why Seneca said, "A person who is not grateful will never be happy, no matter how much they own." Because happiness is not what you receive. It's how you see. You don't suffer because life is terrible. You suffer because you look at life through the lens of lack. You feel unfairness, not because others have more, but because you've forgotten all that you already have. You feel life is meaningless, not because it is empty, but because you've grown too used to the good things to appreciate them. When gratitude fades, every hardship feels heavier, and every success feels thinner. You get angry easily because you no longer notice the greater blessings supporting you every day. You feel powerless because you only see what you lack, not what you've already overcome. You feel lonely because you forget the people quietly standing beside you. You feel life is unfair because you no longer see the gifts life has placed in your hands long ago. So the most important thing is not the life you are living, but the eyes you are using to see it. If you look at life through scarcity, you'll feel like the whole world is against you. If you look at life through gratitude, you'll see that even your struggles are teaching you something. That is how the Stoics remained calm in every circumstance. They never denied pain, but they allowed themselves to look at pain through the lens of appreciation. Gratitude matters because it restores your ability to feel life, something many of us lost in the rush of adulthood. It helps you stop, look around, and realize that the things you treat as ordinary are actually privileges. The breath in your lungs, the health in your body, the chance to work, a person to talk to, a mind that can think, a heart that can love. All of these were once someone's greatest wish. And when you see life through that understanding, ordinary things become precious. Gratitude matters because it breaks the cycle of comparison, one of the greatest mental poisons of our time. Every time you compare, you downgrade your own blessings. You look at someone else's home and forget that you once prayed for a roof to shelter you. You look at someone else's success and forget that you once hoped only to surpass the person you used to be. You look at someone else's happiness and forget that your own joy might be sitting right in front of you. Gratitude matters because it helps you face adversity without collapsing. The ungrateful see hardship as a curse. The grateful see hardship as a teacher. When you learn to be thankful even for the things that hurt, you become stronger, more patient, more grounded. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and instead ask, "What is this trying to teach me?" And sometimes changing the question is enough to change the whole journey. But the deepest reason gratitude matters is because it gives you a sense of fullness from the inside. A fullness nothing external can create. When you are grateful, you no longer depend on outcomes, achievements, or approval to feel enough. You don't need more to feel worthy. You don't need to chase what is far away to feel complete. You don't need to cling to anyone to feel loved. This inner fullness makes you steady, calm, and no longer easily shaken by the outside world. At its deepest level, gratitude helps you make peace with life itself. You stop blaming, stop resenting, stop comparing. You look back at what was good and what was painful, and you realize both shaped who you are today. You are grateful for the times you stood back up, grateful that your heart is still soft after everything it has endured, grateful that life kept opening doors even after you thought everything was over. Gratitude matters because it is the foundation of all inner peace. Without it, you can have everything but feel empty. With it, you can have very little but feel whole. And that is the freedom Seneca wanted to give us. Freedom from comparison, freedom from unrealistic expectations, freedom from the illusion that happiness lives somewhere in the future. Gratitude brings you back to the present, the only place where life truly happens and the only place where happiness truly exists. Once you understand this, you'll see clearly. Gratitude doesn't just help you live better, it helps you see life differently. And sometimes that change in vision is enough to make life feel full again. Try placing yourself in a very familiar moment. A morning just like any other. You wake up feeling heavy, your mind foggy with the worries left unfinished from yesterday. The light slipping through the window doesn't comfort you. It simply reminds you that another long day is starting. You look around your own room but don't feel the presence of home. All you see are responsibilities, tasks, and pressures waiting for you. Almost without thinking, you reach for your phone, scroll through a few polished images online, and instantly feel your life fade a little in comparison. In seconds, your mind shifts from, "What do I have?" to, "What am I missing?" This quiet scene is exactly where pain begins. Not loud, not dramatic, not catastrophic. Just a normal morning, repeated often enough, can drain the meaning out of your life. You can be standing in your own room yet feel like a stranger. You can be living a safe and ordinary life, yet carry a sadness you cannot name. The frightening part is this: no one harmed you, and yet you still feel hurt. Then you step outside, merging into the rush of the city, traffic noises, horns, conversations. All of it forms a wall of chaos you want to escape from. You feel irritated by the crowd, exhausted by the commute, annoyed by small inconveniences. But what you don't see is this: hundreds of people around you are also moving because they have somewhere to go. Yet in that moment, you feel like a victim of everything happening around you. At work, nothing feels different. You look at your computer screen and sigh. The repetitive tasks drain your enthusiasm. A colleague talks excitedly about a new project or a new opportunity, and suddenly you feel behind again. Less valuable, less capable, less lucky. Sometimes in the middle of a tiring meeting, you quietly ask yourself, why is everyone else's life so easy while mine always feels like struggle? And so this silent chain of feelings follows you all the way home. The place that once felt peaceful now feels like somewhere you stay only because you need to sleep. You turn on the light, look around, and realize you don't feel warmth anymore. The familiar objects look distant. The people you love, if they're still there, sometimes add to your irritation simply because you're too drained to feel their love. You lie down, pull the blanket over yourself, and feel nothing but emptiness. This is exactly the environment where gratitude disappears. Not in grand tragedies, but in the plainest days. The days when you forget how to appreciate your own life. The days when you see everything, except the good that is still here. You may be living the very life you once prayed for, yet no longer recognize its value because it feels too familiar. Think of the moments that are easiest to overlook: the quick breakfast you rush through, the call from a loved one you answer half-heartedly, a peaceful evening without any crisis, a morning when your body still has enough strength to get out of bed. We never pause long enough to realize these are privileges until they disappear and we are left grieving what we took for granted. There are subtler moments too, the ones that quietly expose modern loneliness. Sitting alone in a cafe, watching others laugh with friends, wondering why your life doesn't look like theirs. Reading old messages and feeling a soft ache because someone who used to stay no longer does. Looking at yourself in the mirror and not recognizing the hopeful person you used to be. You think you are missing something big, but in truth, you are only missing the ability to see what is still yours. There are evenings when you sit at your desk, trying to finish your work, but your mind drifts toward disappointment, a plan that failed, an opportunity that slipped away, a relationship growing cold. And in those moments, you feel as if life is against you. But even then, you forget to notice what is still on your side: your determination not to give up, your mind learning from mistakes, your heart still wanting to move forward. These things are quiet, so quiet that you don't notice them. But they are real. This is why gratitude fades. Not in thunderstorms, but in routine. Not in dramatic loss, but in the way familiarity blinds you. It hides in the car you drive every day, in the job you call stressful, in the home you treat as ordinary, in the people you label as annoying, in the health you ignore, in the chances you think aren't good enough. Familiarity makes you blind. Repetition makes you numb. And the rhythm of daily life makes you forget that each of these things is a gift. Seneca never spoke of gratitude as moral decoration. He spoke of it as a new pair of eyes, a way to look at your life through a different light. And only when you place yourself inside these ordinary moments do you realize a painful truth. Many things you call burdens are the very things someone else prays for every single day. That's when you understand why gratitude must show up not in dramatic moments, but in the most ordinary ones. Not to deny your struggles, but to remind you that beneath the exhaustion, life is still giving you far more than you think. Not to paint everything rosy, but to help you see the light hidden behind your fatigue. Not to force a fake happiness, but to remind you that even on your most colorless days, there are still things worth holding close in your heart. There are moments so small, yet powerful enough to shift the axis of your entire life. Not because something dramatic happens, but because you suddenly see a truth you've been ignoring for years. Change rarely begins with a loud explosion. It begins with a whisper inside you. I think I've forgotten how to see life. This whisper can come at the sink while you're washing dishes, while waiting at a red light, or while sitting quietly staring out the window. And in that stillness, you feel a familiar ache. The ache called, I've never truly felt enough. Transformation begins with absolute honesty with yourself, with admitting that you've been swept into the rush of life for so long that all you can see now are the things you lack. But when you find the courage to face this truth, you begin to understand what Seneca taught thousands of years ago. We don't suffer because we lack good things. We suffer because we forget the good that is already here. Recognizing this is the first spark of awakening. But transformation doesn't happen in one day. It begins with a new way of looking, a new kind of attention, a new kind of question. You start asking, am I truly lacking, or have I simply stopped seeing what I already have? When that question appears, you've stepped into the first stage of change, the stage of seeing again. In this stage, you begin noticing the moments you used to overlook. You see your parents waiting for you every evening, even when you barely speak a kind word. You see your body carrying you through each day, even when you constantly complain about being tired. You see your friends staying through your worst days, even when you rarely say thank you. You see the simple meals, the close calls, the small opportunities, all the quiet blessings you've been blind to. Recognition is the first step, but the hardest step is the next one, acceptance. Accepting that the things you once dismissed were actually gifts. Accepting that the burdens you once resented were shaping you. Accepting that you missed countless beautiful moments because your eyes were fixed on something else. Acceptance always carries a little pain, but that pain opens the door to the deepest transformation. Then one day you realize the most important truth of all. You don't need to change your whole life to feel peaceful. You only need to change the way you see. This is the turning point. Stoics never chased happiness in the future. They found it in the present moment. When you learn to see life with grateful eyes, the world around you begins to shift, not because it's different, but because you are. From here, the transformation continues quietly but powerfully. You start replacing complaints with simple thank yous. You start seeing an ordinary day as a gift. You start realizing that every past failure has made you stronger. You start revisiting your old wounds with gratitude. Not because they were pleasant, but because you survived them. Slowly you feel lighter. Your mind stops clinging to lack. Your heart becomes calmer, softer, steadier. And it's here you understand. Gratitude is not a feeling, it is a form of healing. It doesn't erase sadness, but it gives sadness meaning. It doesn't remove loss, but it deepens your love for what remains. Real transformation appears when you're not only grateful for the good things, but also for the hard ones. When you can look at a failure and ask, what did it teach me? When you can look at pain and see how it made you stronger. When you can look at yourself with all your wounds, mistakes, and falls, and still say, thank you for not giving up. That is the moment you touch the real power of gratitude. Not surface-level gratitude, but the kind that comes from a heart that has been hurt, tired, disappointed, and still chooses to see the light. And if there is a moment in this process when you stop and realize that you've drifted far from yourself, don't blame yourself. This is a lifelong journey. No one becomes grateful overnight. No one awakens in a single day. But every time you return to yourself, every time you look at the world with appreciation, every time you pause to breathe and realize this moment will never return, that is transformation. If something in your heart stirred while reading this, a question, a softness, a sadness, or an awakening, let it stay. It's a sign you're stepping into the most important journey of your life, the journey of learning how to see again. And if any part of you feels ready to change, ready to appreciate more, ready to reclaim the things you've forgotten, here's a small reminder. Comment 1 if you feel yourself awakening, or 0 if you simply want to hold on to this truth for yourself. The number doesn't matter. What matters is recognizing that the change has already begun. Quietly from within. Something strange happens when you truly begin to see life through the eyes of gratitude. The world doesn't change, but your heart changes completely. The first thing you feel isn't explosive joy, it's a quiet lightness, as if someone has lifted a weight off your shoulders, a weight you carried for so long that you forgot it was there. And in that moment you realize, peace doesn't come from adding more to your life, but from letting go of the illusion of not enough. The first result of this transformation is a quieter mind. The inner dialogue about what you haven't achieved, what you're not good enough at, what you don't have yet, begins to fade. Comparisons lose their grip. Envy loses its sharpness. The feeling of falling behind slowly dissolves. You begin to experience a kind of stillness you once believed only successful or peaceful people could have. But in truth, this stillness comes from one simple shift. You stop looking at life through the lens of lack. From that quietness, you start to see things that were once invisible to you. A simple meal becomes a moment of abundance. A peaceful evening becomes a gift you once treated as ordinary. A caring glance, a gentle question, a moment beside someone you love suddenly feel deeper because you realize none of it is guaranteed. When you feel grateful, the smallest things grow in value, not because they've changed, but because you have changed. What was once background becomes the center. What was once ordinary becomes precious. What you once complained about becomes something you feel lucky to have. And that shift allows you to experience life more fully. One of the deepest outcomes of gratitude is reconciliation. not with others, but with life itself. You begin accepting that the things that once hurt you were part of what shaped you. You no longer look at your past with resentment, but with understanding. You see pain not as an enemy, but as a teacher. You see failure not as an ending, but as the starting point of a stronger version of yourself. This reconciliation doesn't happen in a single moment. It unfolds like a slow healing. Each time you breathe deeply and feel your heart soften. Each time you judge less harshly. Each time you smile at something small, you take one step closer to the peace gratitude creates. The deepest realization comes when you see yourself differently. You begin to appreciate the things about yourself you once ignored. Your resilience, your effort, your kindness, the times you stood back up when no one saw, the burdens you carried quietly without complaint. You realize you've come further than you thought. You realize you're stronger than you believed. You realize you're more deserving than life sometimes made you feel. When you're grateful for yourself, you stop punishing yourself for being human. You stop being harsh about old mistakes. You stop feeling the need to prove your worth. The confidence you've been searching for doesn't come from success. It comes from understanding your own value. The fullness you've been chasing doesn't come from the outside. It comes from knowing you belong in your own life. Gratitude also brings another awareness. You stop fearing loss the way you once did, not because you become numb, but because you understand that everything that comes and goes leaves meaning behind. You feel grateful for having had, grateful for having loved, grateful for having experienced, grateful for every imprint left on your heart. Loss stops being an ending and becomes part of your inner growth. Then at a deeper level, you understand what the Stoics always said. Gratitude is the shortest path to peace, not because it makes life easier, but because it makes your heart wider. When you're grateful, difficulty can't defeat you. When you're grateful, sadness can't consume you. When you're grateful, you aren't chained to what you lack. You become the one in control of your emotions, your reactions, and your life. And finally, the most beautiful outcome of this journey is awakening. You realize you've been surrounded by quiet miracles you never noticed. You realize every moment holds its own value. You realize life doesn't need to be perfect to be worth living. And you realize happiness was never in the destination. It was always in the steps you're taking right now. This awareness doesn't just change the way you live. It changes who you are. It makes you humbler, softer, more understanding, and more at peace. You no longer stand outside your life judging it. You step inside and begin to feel it. You no longer chase something grand. You appreciate what is simple. You no longer live with the weight of lack. You live with the warmth of enough. In the moment you understand that gratitude doesn't just make you happier, it makes you deeper. Life opens up in a completely different way. Not louder, not brighter, but steadier, gentler, more grounded. A mature kind of peace, born from appreciation, from understanding, and from the ability to see meaning in the smallest things. And that is the greatest gift gratitude gives you. It doesn't change the world, but it changes you. And because of that, it changes the way you walk through this world. There comes a moment after you've lived through enough exhaustion when you realize that what makes life heavy isn't what you lack, but what you've stopped noticing. Gratitude doesn't paint life in soft colors, but it gives you the clarity to see that even in chaos, there are still things worth holding close. And sometimes that single moment of realization is enough to change the way you walk into tomorrow. But the more important question is this. In a modern world filled with pressure and endless comparison, what steals our gratitude the fastest? Is it busyness? Is it familiarity? Or is it our own bottomless expectations? What do you think is truly taking away the fullness of your heart?